So we're going to talk about the key lock technology here with True North and kind of explain it to what's a standard in the industry compared to the way that True North does things. So most log home companies start with either a lag bolt, a nail, or a screw. If you were to fasten a log, anywhere where you fasten it, that's where the log will ultimately shrink to. So if I was to nail this dovetail to the dovetail below, what happens is both of these two faces are going to shrink towards that nail. The log has to shrink to the point that it's fastened to. So what happens is that's okay on the outside when this face shrinks in, but when this face shrinks out, it's now shrunk away from the log beside it as well as the log above it. So what happens is it opens an air seal gap that blows right through the corner. Then all of a sudden you're going to want to heat the building, so you want to caulk or chink the exterior of that seam, is what happens in traditional log home construction. What True North does differently is we've patented a polypropylene key lock. The important component with this is the figure 8 pattern that you see on the end of the key lock. What happens is we've drilled out the exact same figure 8 in the top of the logs. This would be clamped into place. We pound this key lock down until this face here is an 1/8 of an inch below the 15-degree watershed dovetail. When we do that, that's not only the fastening component, it's also an air barrier for air when air is transferring through. But like I said, the big pattern is the logs are going to shrink to the point that they're fastened. When they go and shrink towards the point that it's fastened, it's not going to shrink around those two radiuses. And what that does is it draws this corner in tighter against the log below it as well as the log above it. So this joint will get tighter and tighter as time goes on. In between the two key locks, we use what's called an asphalt impregnated foam pad. Its optimal performance is at 50% compression, and we place that directly on top of that key lock once it's pounded down, and that's blocking any air or water from transferring through into the corner. Next log would slide in on top. That log would then be pinned in with another key lock here, so that this log will now shrink towards this log here and the log above it. So it maintains a perfect airtight seal. So if you can picture that, I have a key lock running up, corner pad running across, another key lock running down here, so all the logs will naturally shrink to the point that we want them to shrink to. So the building will tighten over time rather than open up. When I talked about the optimal performance of this corner pad, the reason that it's at 50% compression, we actually mill our dovetails so they'll push down on that pad by 50%. Most log home companies brag about having their dovetail one on top of the other so they're perfectly tight. The issue that occurs is when the water hits the top of that dovetail, it's naturally wanted to be pulled back into the corner system with what's called capillary reaction. So the water being wicked back into the corner system and pooling on top of that dovetail. A proper military dovetail should always have a space on top of it to allow that water to naturally shed away from the corner system. And that is what we call our key lock air seal corner.